Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chasing, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout. Mic check, lights flash, game time, stay ready. 2 vets in the zone, keep the pressure real heavy. Big hits, big plays, yeah, we breaking it down. Truth rings in your speakers, every word is the crown. From the north side hustle to that southern flame. Midwest grind, west coast of the game. Sports talk kings, yeah, we wear that crown. Turn it up, let them know it's about to go down. Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chaser, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout.
It's about to go down.
Hey.
What's up, y'all? 2-5 is here. Sports Reports is ordered. You know, it is Monday, and of course, we're coming at you tomorrow. Remember, only one episode this week with myself and Mr. Logical going over our picks for the week. But I wanted to get into this real quick because, you know, we talk about this a lot. A lot of people make picks, but they don't hold themselves accountable. Well, I'm going to do that. But do me a favor out there. Like, review, share, subscribe, do all the free things, do all the good things, have you a liquid death while you at it. But look, we make our preseason picks, and then some people get to avoid them, right? You know, I didn't say that, or that's not, you know, I make picks all the time. And when I get them right, I'm the only one that remembers. When I get them wrong, people come at me like, oh, you don't know ball and all these unoriginal things that they picked up on other podcasts. But check it out. I'm going to hold myself accountable. So we're going to take it from the top right now. So in the SEC this year, you know, I picked Alabama over Texas in my SEC title game. Now, to go a little further, I picked Alabama as my national champion. Now, I have gotten the last 2 national champions right. But of course, you know, Alabama started out with that loss in Tallahassee this year. And, you know, I panicked a little bit, but we'll see how the season plays out. But let's get into this. You know, Alabama, I just respect Kalen DeBoer. Like, I know a lot of Alabama fans are out on him. It doesn't look like Nick Saban. This doesn't look like SEC football. But the man has won everywhere that he's gone. He's lost something like 16 games in his whole career. You know, he took Washington to the national title game just 2 seasons ago. And now we act as if the man can't coach because they went into Tallahassee, ran into a team that nobody knew what they were going to look like. You know, coming off the 2-10 season, brand new offensive coordinator, brand new defensive coordinator, whole new roster. So I think Bama just got caught sleeping at the wheel. You know, and don't get me wrong, I'm a Florida State fan, so I loved every moment of it. But just keeping it real, I think that they just fell asleep at the wheel. Now, what has happened since then? They've beaten Georgia and Vandy in back-to-back weeks, including between the hedges. You know, Ty Simpson looks like a top 3 quarterback in the sport. This is what Kalen DeBoer does. And then he went and got Ryan Grubb back from the Seattle Seahawks. You knew something was coming. Because the last time we saw them together, they took Washington to the national title game. You remember, you know, he beat Dan Lanning twice in the same season, that same season. So we look at these things in the moment when you have to look at the whole picture and totality of the situation. Now, when it comes to Texas, on the other hand, I didn't believe in Texas. And I know that's contradictory because I said I picked them to go to the SEC title game. There's a reason for that. I looked at the schedule and I didn't see LSU on their schedule. I didn't see Bama on their schedule. You know, so let's just play it out and say that they lost because they go to Georgia too. So let's say they lost to Georgia, which I expect them to. And I picked it in the preseason as well. Then you figure A&M was a toss-up. You thought that Texas would be good enough to win the rest of the games, but that doesn't make Texas a good team. And that's where we have to get into the semantics that people don't like, because more than one thing can be true at the same time. Texas can be a very talented team with players everywhere. Doesn't mean that they're a good team. We didn't know what Arch Manning was going to be. People had all these ideas because his last name was Manning. I could have told you, and I did tell you, so it's just that I don't have enough followers for people to, get up in the weeds of it. But I said this preseason. Arch is not that good of a quarterback. If he was, he would have been playing over Quinn Ewers. If so, we go back to look at his high school competition. A lot of these guys that we see in high school, your DJ Lagways, your Julian Sands, they're playing against the best of the best. Arch was playing against me in high school. Not me literally, but you know what I mean. People of my ilk that don't have that many athletic bones in their body. You've seen the video. You've seen the tape. Sark coming into this season. Yes, Texas went to the playoffs, semifinals back-to-back years. That's not Sark usually. Sark is 8-win, 9-win Sark throughout his career. They just had great teams the last couple of years. But looking at this schedule, I saw Kentucky. I saw Mississippi State. And I said, hey, you know what? Texas has got a chance. I don't think Texas is better than Georgia. But I don't think Georgia's that good from the standpoint comparing them relative to their teams over the past couple of years. Because I came into this season with questions about their offensive line, questions about their secondary, which are two things that I normally don't question about a Kirby Smart team. I don't think Texas was better than Tennessee. I just think that these other teams played each other. And that's what was going to be the difference in the SEC title game, was that they were going to be able to navigate an easy schedule, and then Bama would expose them in the SEC title game. They might get to the playoff, beat the Big 12 champion. I'm still talking about Texas. And then they would lose the next round. That's the way I had it playing out. So this is not me second guessing or playing the moment and being like, hey, Texas is really bad. This is what I said preseason. All right. Big Ten. And then now this one, woo, boy, this one. So I went Penn State over Indiana. I'm not afraid to admit it. James Franklin bit me again. So last year, right? And I hate these conversations because people say, well, I don't think Penn State was a national title contender. I don't think Penn State was ever a threat to win the national title. They were literally an interception with about 30 seconds left from potentially playing for the national title. They didn't lose to SMU in that first round playoff game. Yes, you could argue they had an easy schedule in the playoff, but I'm just saying at the end of the day, Penn State came into the season with all the things back from a team that made the national semifinal, right? The quarterback, both running backs. They went out and got better receivers in the transfer portal. Yes, they lost Abdul Carter. They still got talent on defense. But the problem isn't the talent. The problem is the head coach. And I should have known that when I made that prediction. I like James Franklin. He was Maryland's head coach in waiting. And in case you didn't know, I'm from Baltimore. So he was supposed to be Maryland's head coach in waiting. So I'm all about James Franklin. But I have this scale that I like to refer to as the Tubby Smith scale. And these are guys that coach well at these bottom feeders / mid-tier schools. But then when you put them on the upper echelon, they just don't belong. So I think James Franklin would have killed it at Maryland. You saw what he did at Vanderbilt. But Penn State is a whole different animal. Penn State is not Ohio State. They are not Michigan. They don't recruit the way that Oregon does. But they're a damn good program, especially historically. So they have expectations that might be a little bit higher than they should be, relatively speaking to those teams that I just mentioned. But they're right there, 9 out of 10. Now, they went up here to Westwood the other day and got their pants pulled down in the Rose Bowl. That can't happen. That can't happen. I'm not going to overreact and say that James Franklin should be fired, but they both should just mutually want to be away from each other, because he went out and got Andrew Kotelnicki, who I like a lot, but I feel like he hamstrung him. And he went out and got Jim Knowles, who now we're doing this revisionist history because they lost to UCLA the way that they did. And now Jim Knowles suddenly isn't a good defensive coordinator. Why are we so overreactionary? Jim Knowles has data upon data and results upon results to show the defensive coordinator that he is. And no, I'm not talking about at Ohio State last year, because a lot of people can win at Ohio State. But he had Oklahoma State with a great defense. He had Duke with a pretty damn good defense years ago. So don't do that to him. Now, Indiana, on the other hand, we're going to find out about them this weekend because they're going up to Autzen Stadium. They walk out of Autzen with a win. Now we really got to have some serious conversations. And I know people are looking at Indiana through the lens of last year. You beat up on a whole lot of nobodies. And then whenever you played somebody good, i.e. Ohio State and Notre Dame, you got whooped. Okay? That's fair. I can't argue against that. But what I can tell you is they went and beat up on the Illini by 53 points. The same Illini turned around and beat Trojangelis, a.k.a. USC, the next week, a.k.a. the School of Juju. So, I just don't know what we're looking for. So now they got to go to Autzen. I was down on Oregon this year. I thought they lost a lot. And truthfully, they did. But that's Nike University, so of course they're going to reload. Dante Moore looks like he could be in the Heisman conversation, but people are going to knock him down a few pegs because of what happened to Penn State this weekend. So we're going to find out this weekend what's real, who's real, and we'll go from there. Now, Ohio State. I didn't think Ohio State was going to be bad, but I had never seen Julian Sayin before. I didn't know, what it was going to look like without JTT. I knew they still had Caleb Downs on the back end. CJ Donaldson has been a little bit of a disappointment, but Ohio State might have the best player in the country in Jeremiah Smith. So that's on me. That's the bad, right? But I'm owning that. I'm sticking with it. You know what I'm saying? I can't choose Penn State now, obviously. But hey, until Indiana ain't in it, I'm sticking with the Hoosiers. All right, Big 12. This one was ugly. This one was the ugly because I picked Kansas State over Baylor in the Big 12 championship game. Same things. I was looking at quarterbacks, right? Avery Johnson taking a leap forward, not realizing that the defense was going to be as bad as it is. I don't think Chris Kleiman is as bad a coach as the product that the Wildcats are putting out on the field this year. Texas Tech has always been the team that had the potential, but never lived it. Now they went out in the portal. David Bailey, Romello Height, that defensive line is humming, and they look like the team to beat right now. Now, granted, we got a big win in Salt Lake City this weekend. Arizona State, the Sun Devils, going out to get some Ute. So we're going to see how that game plays out. Texas Tech already won in Salt Lake City. So Utah can't lose this game this weekend. But there's a team that's creeping that we got to start thinking about. Preseason, right? I came in and said that Houston was going to be my surprise team because I love Coach Willie Fritz. Now, when I said surprise team, that didn't mean that they were going to go to the Big 12 championship game. I just meant that they're going to be the team that wins 8 games and you go, how the hell did that happen? It looks like Cincinnati might be that team. Cincinnati, opened up the season with that loss to Nebraska, dumb interception by Sorsby to close out the game. And then all of a sudden, we turned our backs on Cincinnati for a second because I'm not the biggest Scott Satterfield guy anyway. But we turned our back on Cincinnati. They lost to Nebraska up in Arrowhead. Whatever. They're just Cincinnati. And here they are, right? And I know Iowa State was hurt. I don't care. They put up 38 on the Cyclones, beat a ranked team, didn't get ranked. Where we do that at? Whereas Notre Dame was out here ranked at 0-2, but that's a whole nother conversation. As for Baylor, that run defense is awful. They made Jackson Arnold look like the reincarnation of Tommy Frazier in week 1, and since then, they have the quarterback. I like the quarterback at Baylor. He could be getting Heisman votes if the rest of the team would help him out, so I got that one completely wrong. So now I'm looking at this, and it looks like Texas Tech might be the team to beat, and maybe they'll get the winner of this Utah-Arizona State game this weekend. We'll see. ACC, woo! Okay. So Clemson, right? I picked Clemson as the ACC winner. Returning production, just like Penn State. Dabo Swinney, proven national title head coach. But of course they needed a running back. They got all the talent back on defense, Parker and the gang. So I said, you know what? Miami, I don't trust Mario Cristobal in big moments. You know, we haven't got there yet, but they did almost blow that Notre Dame game to start the season on Labor Day weekend. And that was the game where I kind of felt validated, even though Miami won. I felt validated of, see, if you give him a chance to screw it up, he will. But so far, so good. The Canes look like the best team in the country. And I know that Ohio State is the best team in the country by metrics. You know, as far they haven't given up double-digit points in a game yet. You know, they're the defending national champion, even though I don't believe in that. This is a whole new year with a whole new team, quarterback, all that. But you got to give Ohio State their due, right? But I think Miami might be the best team in the country. And I don't say that as a Florida State fan very lightly. I don't say that as a Florida State fan because they came into Tallahassee and put the beat down on us the other night. I say that because Miami wins football games in the way that you should win football games. You know, see, you got players like your Ryan Williamses and your Jeremiah Smiths, you know, who you can't necessarily cover. So it's like, hey, just get him the ball and good things will happen. No, Miami wins the game in the trenches. The offensive line is going to beat you up and the defensive line is going to put you on your ass. So that's how you win football games. It just so happens they play in Miami, so they got speed everywhere to go along to complement that. So I think at this moment, you could make an argument that Miami is the best team in the country because I don't do the bias thing. I'm trying my best, right? So give me that. But Clemson, they came into the season with all the things. You know, you look at their schedule, you know, they don't play Miami in the regular season. You know, they get what? FSU, who was coming off the 2-10 debacle. You know what I mean? But there's one team or two teams, I'll get to that in a second. There's a team that I picked to beat Clemson preseason. And then when it came to game week, I punked out because Clemson was coming off the loss in the bad to LSU in the bad performance against Troy. And I was like, no, they're going to go into Georgia Tech and they're going to reintroduce themselves. I was wrong. I should have stuck with my preseason pick because I said back in July, Georgia Tech's going to beat Clemson on 9-13. They did beat Clemson on 9-13. But that's not the team that I picked to go to the ACC championship game. The team that I picked to go to the ACC championship game plays in the state of Kentucky. That would be the Louisville Cardinal. Coach Brom, Miller Moss, Isaac Brown. I just believed, and I also saw Louisville go into Death Valley last year and give Clemson the Beats by Dre, where my money at. So I came into this season high on Louisville, probably a little higher than people thought. Now, Louisville then lost the overtime game to UVA, who was one of my surprise teams in the ACC, but it was the Texas rule. I didn't think that UVA was very good, per se. I just thought they had a good schedule. They had the schedule. No Miami, no Clemson. You know, you got to do something with that, right? So here we are now. You know, now Florida State has 2 conference losses. So now they're behind the 8 ball. Theoretically, Florida State should win out, you know, as far as the ACC goes. Florida is always going to be a toss-up rivalry game, right? But as far as the rest of the ACC goes, I'm not afraid of Pitt this weekend. I'm not afraid of NC State. Oh, well, I am afraid of NC State if you know Florida State history. But I'm talking about this year, here and now. I'm not afraid of NC State until game week. You know, Georgia Tech, you know, they got the lane, you know, but they also had the referee help 2 weeks ago against Wake Forest, right? Wake Forest could have kneeled out the clock if that offsides was called. But don't put the game in the ref's hands. So no harm, no foul. Georgia Tech's in the driver's seat to play Miami in the ACC championship game. We'll see what happens. But, you know, I got that one completely wrong. Mountain West. I don't think there was a way to get this one wrong. I don't think there was. If you didn't pick Boise and UNLV in the Mountain West title game, I don't know, you know, like what to think about that but now, guess what? Sean Lewis, right? Wrongfully scapegoated at Colorado, got San Diego State humming. That defense is for real. You know, they shut out Cal a couple of weeks ago. They might have put the final nail into Jay Norvell's coffin this past weekend against Colorado State. But UNLV, right? Dan Mullen is a very good coach that got chased out of Florida, right? Because I talked about this with James Franklin. I ain't going to get too deep back into it, but that Tubby Smith scale. Dan Mullen had Mississippi State as a threat, had them number 1 in the first ever college football playoff ranking. And then he went to Florida, and recruiting is a whole different animal down there. It's great if you can coach, but you got to get these players too. And that's what he wasn't doing. So now he's out there in Vegas, right? And he can do these things. I can coach them up. I can bring these 3 stars in here, these rejects, these players that a lot of people didn't want. And I can make it happen. And that's what he's doing right now, sitting at 5-0 right now. Boise, on the other hand, lost Ash Genty to the NFL. You know, they came out week 1 and Blitzkrieg, right? South Florida came out gunning. Okay, you lost that game. You know, we learned that South Florida is very good because what did they do the next week? They went into the swamp. The same swamp that Texas just got their ass kicked in, by the way. Okay. So, and then, you know, that's the other thing too. You know, Florida wasn't playing well. And, you know, like I said, it pains me as a Florida State fan. But that was part of why I picked Florida to beat Texas the other day, is because when you look at them, you say they're a bad team. Their losses were to USF, at LSU at night, and at Miami at night. So they weren't a bad team. They just didn't play Sam Houston State and San Jose State like Texas did. But anyway, getting back to the point. So Boise, you know, their other loss, they went up to South Bend last week and they got stomped out. Now, you know, you look at that and you say you lost 2 games by a combined 77-14, those 2 games. But guess what? There ain't no Notre Dame in the Mountain West. There ain't no South Florida in the Mountain. Well, maybe UNLV, but you get the point. You know, San Diego State is a good team, but I still think I would pick Boise over them. But we'll see how it plays out. So for now, I'm going to give myself a little bit of kudos on that one. Not too many, but just a little bit of kudos. All right, CUSA. All right. My Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. That's my alma mater out there for y'all. I picked them to make the title game against Delaware. And we just saw that game the other night. Great game that came down to the last 20 or 30 seconds, right? Delaware is a very good FCS program that was better than an FCS program. You know, the problem, of course, is Delaware can't even go to a bowl game this year because it's their first year, you know, in FBS. Dumb rule. I don't understand it. You know, as Mr. Logical said the other day, I understand if you were, say, South Carolina, and then you went down to FCS and they said, hey, you can't play for this title. I can understand that. But coming up the other way, if these FBS teams can't beat you, that's not your fault. You know, so I came into the season liking Sam Houston a lot just because I know them to play very good defense. It hasn't worked out well. I thought Liberty would take a step back. You know, I love Jamie Chadwell. He should be on that short list for Virginia Tech, but he's not helping himself right now. You know, I didn't think Liberty would be this bad. You know, I don't think anybody could have. I did believe that Middle Tennessee would be this bad. But, you know, Western Kentucky and Louisiana Tech look like the best teams in the conference right now. And shout out to Kennesaw State. You know, they almost pulled off one down in Winston-Salem to start the season. So don't count them out just yet. They play Louisiana Tech at home this weekend. That game is going to go a long way to determining how CUSA plays out. Then you got the Sun Belt. So far, so good, right? James Madison against South Alabama. Now, with that being said, you know, James Madison, you know, Matthew Schluka and his drama, right? Coming in from UNLV, they didn't give me my money, all that kind of stuff. But Bob Chesney, the head coach, you know, I like him. You know what I'm saying? I like him. But, you know, South Alabama came out here and lost to Troy the other day. You know, they're sitting at 1-5, so that's ugly. But, you know, real talk, and this is crazy to even think about, there is a chance that this Old Dominion JMU game could be for a playoff spot. At the very least, a spot in the Sun Belt Championship game. But could be for a playoff spot because these or not AAC. I'm sorry, I don't want to do that. These American teams still have to play each other. You know, we still got UNT and USF on Friday night coming up. You know, Tulane and Memphis still have to play. You know, Memphis and South Florida, so on and so forth. A lot of these teams still have to play each other. So if JMU and Old Dominion continue to do their part, because remember, JMU's only loss is on a Friday night at Louisville. You know what I mean? So we'll see. You know what I'm saying? Louisiana, you know, the Raging Cajuns, you know, they might have an outside shot here. They put up 54 on Marshall last week. Only problem is they gave up 51. Southern Miss looks a lot better because they stole Marshall's coach and the whole roster, basically. So don't count them out. But for the most part, and of course, we saw how Troy looked against Clemson, right? 16-3 lead in the second quarter and everything. So the Sun Belt's going to get a whole lot of fun before we get the final answers to the test. The MAC. Okay, now, Jason Candle, we got beef. Because every year, right, Toledo looks the part. I say something along the lines of, hey, Jason Candle should be a candidate for that job last year, right? Hey, Jason Candle should be a candidate for Purdue. Those were my thoughts. Jason Candle can't stop losing these games that he shouldn't lose. They just lost to Western Michigan 2 weeks ago. You know, I came into the season thinking they were going to beat Kentucky. I thought Toledo was going to have a chance to be in the playoff discussions. That ain't happening. You know, Buffalo, on the other hand, you know, had to escape the other day on a 2-point conversion folly by Eastern Michigan. But I think they still got a chance. You know, Miami's a little slowed down, if you will, compared to most years. Ohio just went out and lost to Ball State. So there's a whole lot of chaos going on in the MAC. You know what I mean? Miami's defense will keep them in the conversation. On November 12th, you know, they're playing Toledo. You know, they go to Athens the week before that. Not Athens, Georgia, Athens, Ohio, to play the Bobcats. Ohio closes at Buffalo. So we might have a little round robin situation going on to figure out who's going to win this conference. Then you got the American, you know, to close it out. I went with Tulane and Memphis preseason with Tulane as the winner. So Tulane, you know, has been up and down. You know, they started off the season with some Power 5 wins, not necessarily Power 4, not necessarily the best Power 4 teams. There's Northwestern, there's Duke. Okay, good job. Then they went down to Oxford and Vaught-Hemingway, and woo, they got it put on them, right? So they struggled against South Alabama. You know, got out of that game by the hairs on their chinny chin chin. So now I just went over kind of the teams that play each other in the AAC. Of course, Memphis beat Arkansas. They're undefeated, the only 6-0 team in the country right now. First team to clinch a bowl berth. Shout out to Coach Silverfield, who, hey, don't do the thing, right? Because Justin Fuentes came from Memphis and went to Virginia Tech. So I'm sure Virginia Tech fans are saying, we want nothing to do with coaches from Memphis. This one's different. And if it ain't Virginia Tech, Arkansas, look them up. Look up Coach Summerall at Tulane. But do it quick because Auburn might be coming open this season too. But we'll get into it a little bit more tomorrow on Sports Reports as Ordered. But I don't know. I might like Auburn this weekend. We'll see. We'll see. But anyway, you know, Navy's still undefeated in conference. You know, so here we go. This is going to be a walk all the way to the end. And I can't lie to you. The Maryland part of me, the veteran part of me, is cheering for Navy to do this. You know what I mean? Like growing up in Maryland, we had the Terps. And then I didn't know anything about the military as a little kid. So I always look at Navy as a Maryland team. So I cheer, you know, I want Navy to do well, make the state look good. But, you know, Memphis USF, October 25th. Yes, that is 19 days from now. Tulane on November 7th, you know, so for Memphis. So Tulane is coming down here to the Alamo to play UTSA, who I thought would be a little bit more of a player in this conversation. But you know what UTSA did the other day? They went out and lost to Temple. They lost to Temple. So I will be in the stadium this weekend watching them play Rice. I was there earlier this season when they lost to Texas State, and I mean, damn. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm telling you right now, UTSA's corners couldn't catch COVID if you locked them in a closet with Rudy Gobert. You know, ECU is still alive. You know, so the American is going to come down to the wire. So, you know, good, bad, and ugly. I'm not up here. Nobody's batting 1,000, right? So there ain't too much pride involved in these picks. I looked at the data. I looked at the teams. I made choices. Some were okay. Some were wrong. Some still have a very good chance to happen. The difference is I'm going to hold myself accountable. I ain't going to run from the smoke. So what I will ask you to do is let me know where you got it right so far, where you got it wrong. And I know it's the halfway point, but, you know, let's talk about it. So I'm 2-5. I'm here representing Sports Reports is Ordered. We will be here tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern to break down picks for this week, NFL and collegiate, both myself and Mr. Logical. We love y'all so much. Grab y'all a Liquid Death. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things that cost you nothing. I will never charge you. See you tomorrow.
Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chasing, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout. Mic check, lights flash, game time, stay ready.